All right, we should be live now. Jeremy, do you?
Is it the same link on YouTube?
No, maybe a different
Okay.
link because
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah. There we.
bypassed because it just says that it's upcoming. So,
Yep. There we are.
okay, perfect. Um, all right. Yeah, there you are. Okay. So welcome everybody to the third episode of Cocktail Apocalypse, Happy Hour at the End of the World. I am joined today, as usual, with Stephanie Bidet and Jeremy Anderson. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here today.
Yes, and Jeremy, how are you?
I am doing very well. Also happy
Okay.
to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well. We've been away for a couple of months. It's been
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
eventful and hectic summer so far. Borderline apocalyptic, I would say.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, many revelations at least. Put it that way. So today we are looking at the AI apocalypse, and I intentionally titled this version 1.0 because I think it's something that we'll be addressing probably in more detail a little bit later. To begin, I thought that there are two primary questions that we should probably address. And one is, what do we mean by the AI apocalypse? And second, and maybe this should be what we look at first, I don't know, I'll leave it to you two. But what do we mean by AI? What do we mean by artificial intelligence? Because I think
Mm.
that a lot of people have a lot of different ideas of what that is, and maybe not all of them are quite correct. So, yeah, what is the AI apocalypse, and what do we mean by AI?
Mhm. Do you want to start with sexy AI and non-sexy AI?
Well, we can. What is sexy AI, and what is non-sexy AI?
Stephanie, take it away.
Oh, yeah, right. Send it over to me.
I forget. I
Um,
forget which one was sexy and which one was not sexy. But
I think sexy AI is sci-fi AI, right? The
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that we're all used to seeing in the movies. The Skynet is
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
my go-to sexy AI, where um, AI becomes sentient and it takes over everything and it scorches the earth and we all have to go underground to live because the AI have determined that we are scourges to the earth, right? And
Hmm.
and they just take over and we are, all considered vermin. Uh, or, uh, what was the other one with
The
Agent
Matrix.
Smith, The
Oh, the
Yeah, the
Matrix,
Matrix.
Matrix.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Uh, so, and that's another one where we all go underground. It seems that the humans always end up um, running from the AIs, that we
Hmm.
aren't, we're all determined to be superfluous rats, things that aren't vermin of some sort,
Hmm.
that we are cancers to the earth. And
Virus.
we can argue as to whether, yeah, we could argue whether or not that, that's true or not. But certainly we are considered to be problematic as
Mm-hmm.
beings on this planet. But the AI itself has become so smart and uh, much smarter than we are. And but it doesn't typically have that emotional IQ to go along with
Hmm.
it. So it's just like, oh, exterminate. Maybe
Right.
Doctor Who, the Daleks, I
Yeah.
believe.
Right. Right.
Yep.
Exterminate, exterminate.
Yeah.
But that's I think how sexy AI is. We can argue whether or not it's sexy, but it's certainly sleek.
Right.
Right.
Right. The
Or maybe
sci-fi.
from the sci-fi. maybe sexy AI would be Six from Battlestar Galactica. You know, the
Mm,
sexy bombshell,
mm,
blonde bombshell. You know.
mm. Yeah. And so, what then is the non-sexy AI?
It's the AI we're currently experiencing,
Mm,
particularly like ChatGPT and Midjourney and things like that, that are taking information from elsewhere and trying to generate something new. And I'm putting that in air quotes for a reason, but
mm.
I mean, we're seeing that all over the
Yeah.
place, and I think all of us have some experience with that.
Right. Yeah, and it seems to me that most people are kind of assuming in many ways that the AI that we have now is the sexy AI. There
Hmm.
seems to be this common error, I would say, that
Yes.
they think that AI has actually achieved some kind of awareness, that it's sentient, that it's conscious.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
don't think we're there yet. And
No.
that's a huge problem because, one is, well, how will we ever know?
Hmm.
And, what are the methods that we can test this? Talk about, AI apocalypses. Another film would be Ex Machina that addresses that
Hmm.
question right away,
Yes.
right? But we can't even explain human consciousness yet.
Right.
So, if we can't explain our own subjectivity, how can we explain or even know if a computer or a network has its own subjectivity?
Right. Yeah. And consciousness, self awareness, are those the same things?
That's a good question. I would say that you probably have to have consciousness to have self awareness.
Hmm.
Because, and that's a whole other question. I mean, it's a related
Yeah. Right.
question of what do
Right.
we mean by consciousness in general.
Hmm.
And typically, one of the ways of looking at consciousness is that it is awareness.
Hmm.
And we can also add on to it that it's awareness of being aware,
Hmm.
which I think is kind of a self awareness. But I
Right.
think you can have consciousness without self awareness.
Hmm.
I think,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. In order to be conscious, does that mean you're, if you, mhm. Yeah, that's a tough one. Like you have to have some
Yeah.
awareness of the environment around you, right? In
Right.
order to be able to interact with that environment around you. Is that the
Yeah.
consciousness? Is that the first level of awareness?
Right.
Yeah. I think there are different levels of consciousness that one could have, or a
Hmm.
being could have.
Yeah.
As to what creatures have. I mean, I think it's quite obvious to me that many animals have consciousness.
Mm.
Hmm.
Do
Right.
they have, how developed is their self awareness? Is up for a deeper question.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know.
Yeah. And one of the ways that I think this is sometimes thought about is that the more complex something is, the more conscious it can be. So we can
Hmm.
say
Hmm.
that, and this is a very non materialist, I think, way of looking at consciousness, but we can say that, amoebas, protozoas have some kind of consciousness, but they're not thinking deep thoughts, right?
Right.
And we could
Hmm.
say that ants will have a more complex consciousness, but not the same consciousness as a squirrel or
Right.
a fox, and that the consciousness of the squirrel and the fox isn't quite at the same level as the chimpanzee or the apes or humans. So the more complex, the more conscious it could be. But that brings in another issue here is the models that we use, and I think this is where AI kind of fits into this, the models that we use to describe the world, the metaphors we use, we often look at our technologies. And
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
one of the metaphors that's used quite often now is that the brain is like a computer.
Right.
And
And
so, yeah, and it seems to me that when you say that or take that route, when we have a conversation about AI, we're also really having a conversation about ourselves.
right. But it also kind of becomes cyclic at that point, right?
Mm. How so?
If we're using our own consciousness to understand the consciousness of an AI, and we're using a computer model to understand our own consciousness, suddenly we're referring on ourselves through the use of the computer and computers through the use of ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. Well, it's metaphor, you know.
Right.
And that's what we've done for a very long time is used the most up-to-date technologies that we have to describe, humanity. So in modernism, we're just machines. And we're still kind of machines, but now we are these incredibly complex machines, like computers. Right. But who knows what the next technology, and maybe AI is, that's a deep question maybe that I don't know. I certainly don't have an answer to it or any coherent thoughts, but what is AI going to say about humanity? In what ways are we going to use that to reflect back in ourselves?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another way to kind of think about this levels of intelligence, that might be another way to put it, is like in gaming spaces, NPCs, non-player characters, have AI, but they certainly aren't self-aware, but they're somehow aware of the graphic environment in which they're living. Which brings us to another aspect of artificial intelligence apocalypses, is the simulation aspect.
Yeah. And another movie, we should have a viewing or a couple of viewings of some of these films, but Free Guy, who is the he's the NPC character that becomes aware.
Okay.
Yeah. So it happens. It's a fun film, very similar to the Truman Show.
Mm-hmm.
To circle back to, I think, Jeremy's point that what does it say about, maybe it was your point, Nick, to what it says about us. No, I think it was Jeremy's point. Sorry about that.
We're all here.
We're all here. To circle back to that, what does it say about us that when we think about AI and we think about the AI apocalypse, because that's what our genre of literature keeps talking about. AI destroying everything. Why is that what's stuck in our minds, that it's going to destroy everything? I mean, I think that says a lot about us, right?
Right.
That we automatically have jumped to the conclusion that AI is going to destroy everything.
Right.
Well, because we destroy everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But it does talk about what we really think of ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We have this subconscious awareness that we are destructive beings.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think that says quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
And, one of the things, to go back to one of the films, Ex Machina, that I've thought about, and I think this applies to what you were just saying, Steph, is that, spoiler alert, what's the I don't want to call her a robot. I don't remember her name. Was it Ava? I think. Anyway,
I honestly don't remember.
She commits murder, right?
Right.
In order to obtain freedom. And I was reflecting at one point whether or not I was thinking in terms of the Cain and Abel story, and looking at that as kind of being representative of the birth of consciousness, because we had to kind of, from a metaphoric aspect, murder a part of ourselves in a way. We had to give up that sort of animality in order to achieve this sort of illusion of freedom and free will. But I was wondering, and maybe that's part of the fear of AI, is that it is going to, commit a murder of the creators.
Right.
Or if it looks at us as kin of sorts, I don't know. That's just something I just wanted to propose because I've thought about that before.
Right.
Because it does go back into.
Well, that's the
Please, Steph.
that is the premise of Battlestar Galactica. Is that the Cylons commit genocide against the humans who created them,
Mhm.
understanding that they are their parents.
Right.
Right.
You know, and that's what they initially say is that, well, in order to have true freedom, you have to kill your parents.
Mm.
And if we look back at the myths, if we look back to the Greek gods or the Olympians killing the Titans, it's like
Right.
that's kind of what happens,
Mm.
in our myths, even where you
'Cause, I mean,
have this, you always have this slaying of what came before
right.
and supplanting, you know.
Hmm.
eh, it's
Does that mean I
kind of a,
exited my childhood incorrectly if I've not killed my parent? I shouldn't have said this over a recorded channel, should I?
well,
that's
now
that's
we,
why I'm not self-aware net.
Well, you don't. I don't think you have to literally kill them, but
Right,
you
right,
can
right.
symbolically sort of sever that relationship.
Yeah.
It's just that the Cylons and the being in Ex Machina kind of took it a little bit literal,
Right.
which just shows what taking things literally where it gets us.
Mhm. Right. But it is about that severance of the tide that allows you to do what you want. Your parents are sort of a guiding
Mhm.
figure in your life, and as long as you let them be that guiding figure, do you have real freedom?
Yeah. And now that we say this, and just for the audience, anyone, we're just kind of riffing this morning on this. Again, version 1.0, we're going to probably take some of these ideas and expand upon them. And I would love to know from anyone watching this now or later what your thoughts are on the AI apocalypse and anything that we discuss here, and maybe we can incorporate them into the future conversations. But that said, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I think another sci-fi film that kind of addresses this same issue is Blade Runner. I'm thinking of the
Yeah.
Rutger Hauer, his sort of monologue towards the very end, because wasn't it him? It wasn't him trying to murder the father, but it was trying to find the father. It was more of a kind of almost like a Gnostic take on things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blade Runner is certainly that type of story where you have the androids who um, they've been created to do a certain task, and
Mhm.
they've been kind of created cruelly, by humans, to do something
Right.
that they're sentient. They don't really want to do it. And that's also the story of Battlestar Galactica. You have the Cylons created to do
Mhm.
difficult tasks, and they're like, we don't want to do this anymore. It's killing us,
Mhm.
and we don't like it. And
Right.
so you also have that aspect of, while they turn against their human creators, their human creators are kind of dickish, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
Mhm.
it's, well, they have a point.
Right.
They have
That's
and they want
Yeah,
to
and
say
that's another,
stop.
and that is another common theme in science fiction, is the manufactured alien race or whatever it is, artificial intelligence, being treated cruelly, and so they rise up and murder their own creators. So we at risk of doing that here on Earth with our own AI, sexy or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just going to say that we have a comment here that AI has trouble doing a lot of things, so I don't see it happening. I see more of a wall E where it makes us lazier.
Hmm.
And that's certainly a possibility, I think. But if we get so lazy that we have them doing everything, and there is a sort of sentience that evolves,
Right.
maybe they do go dark.
Right.
Maybe Wall-E does take a knife to us in the middle of the night. Who knows?
Right. Right. But this comes back to the whole idea of levels of consciousness of AI.
Right.
Right? There's no way the NPCs in my Minecraft game are going to come out and kill me in real life.
That you're aware of.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I we still have to see where the technology takes us, and even if we survive as a species, because who knows,
Right.
who knows. So I'm kind of curious what your experiences have been with AI so far. Kind of shift us away a little bit from science fiction to AI in our everyday lives, because I imagine that there's a lot of ways that we have encountered AI, and maybe some ways that we're not even aware that we're associating with AI or utilizing it.
Right. Shall I go get the real Jeremy and we can talk about this some more?
Yes, please. And I forgot to mention this. I was going to mention this before recording, because typically in the episodes we usually have a little bit of a break and go to Jeremy's YouTube channel where he shares a drink recipe. And I thought for a few moments before we hit record that what we really should have done is use ChatGPT or something to generate a drink recipe, just to see what it would have been.
And that is happening. Cocktail creators are using AI to generate cocktails.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
As long as they're tasty.
Yeah,
I don't care
Right, as long as it's tasty.
And that's the thing with the AI generated stuff that's coming out. What they're finding is that, would it be tasty? Well, maybe, but it's usually accidental. Because at the point that we're at right now, it doesn't. It would take all of Jeremy's recipes, mash them together,
right,
and come up with something based upon some sort of algorithm, right?
right.
So it itself doesn't understand what it's doing.
Right.
It just knows that based upon all of the stuff that Jeremy's ever done, this is what it would, this is the type of recipe, and it would come up with something like so many ounces for this and that, right? And mix it together, and you might taste it and spit it out because it doesn't understand what makes a good cocktail.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And that brings to mind the question of, does it have, for something to be sentient, to be aware, does it also have to have sensual experiences? Does it have to be able to taste and to feel and to actually hear?
And therein lies the problem. It doesn't have any input like that.
Right.
Can't.
Right. But here's another question. Does it have to have sensory input from the physical world as we know it? Or can it be a simulated environment that it's interacting with, and that's where it gets a sensory input?
Great observation. And maybe that's exactly what it is. And that's bringing up questions to me about, our simulation theory, right?
Right.
Are you and I a simulation? Because that would qualify for what we're experiencing right now. We're just a bunch of not just pixels, but everything that we're encountering is just based on some sort of program. And I don't know how they would create that, because I'm not, I don't understand such things, but that's what we would be,
Right.
and So yeah, I think you're right, Jeremy. I think you could probably create that, but I don't think we're there yet
Mm-hmm.
in
Right.
our understanding of technology in order to do it. But that doesn't mean we couldn't be.
Right.
It just means we're
And
not
it,
there yet.
right. And it may be that if I played a lot of video games, and some of the environments are pretty sophisticated, and some of the NPC artificial intelligence on them is kind of sophisticated. But if you put that level of intelligence in a simulated environment, do they eventually become self-aware within that environment? And would we ever know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
All great points.
Yeah. Again,
No answers.
again, you're gonna have to watch Free Guy about
Okay.
that. Yeah, because the programmers do become aware that the NPC becomes aware.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's a fun film. It's a fun film. So. Yeah, so these are all awesome questions, and I'm thinking again the Matrix with I forget the character's name where he's decided to go back into the Matrix and he's eating the steak and he's like,
yeah.
I know that this is all fake, but it still tastes really good.
Yeah.
Cypher.
Yeah, Cypher, right?
Cypher.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have AI in computer games. What else have we experienced AI in?
Well, I did mention the cocktails.
Oh yeah, the
but
cocktails. Yeah.
Even just making YouTube videos, a lot of people are using AI now to generate thumbnails, to generate scripts for their videos, that sort of thing.
Right.
And this is the non-sexy
you know-
AI.
And
Lethal.
Jeremy, you or not Nick, you and I have had the issue of people going to Chat GPT to generate papers, or to generate answer you prompts in online courses. So we have people who are using it to basically take online courses, or to take any. You could take an on-ground course and use Chat GPT or any other types that are coming out now, because I know there are other programs now, and they're coming out faster, and Chat GPT is one of the first, but there will be more. They will be better.
Yeah.
And I think it bears saying that it was the fastest Chat GPT and AI generators in general were the fastest adopted programs ever. Within a few months, you had millions and millions of people using them. And, it took people years to use other platforms at that level. And this was just like a couple of months, and it had that many users. So this is something that has become an issue. We have to start taking a lot of attention to that and what it's going to mean for us.
Right. Yeah. My first time catching it in an online classroom was this summer at one school, and it was just online discussions, and it frustrated me because, one, these are really kind of informal discussions. There's absolutely no need to go to AI. I mean, as long as students aren't writing in gibberish and they hit the minimum word requirement, they get full credit. And I noticed that these answers were very, very similar. And you learn the level that students can write at. And community college students, I can spot their writing. I know when it's them and I know when it's not. And then even when they were dissimilar, they were still similar enough in terms of like the patterning. Because usually I would have to, most of my grading would be like, okay, 150 words, that's your minimum. This is like 30. You can do more than that. And now they're like presenting all these paragraphs. And if I compare them, each paragraph, it may be worded slightly differently. It's always about the same thing. So there's a pattern to it. And it's trickier to catch because with plagiarism, I would always tell students I could catch plagiarism like it's like noticing a fart in a car, because again, the level that they're capable of writing at, and you can just like copy and paste something into Google and it'll say, oh yeah, this is where it comes from. And then there are programs like Turnitin.com that can catch it and tell you, yeah, exactly, this is where it came from. But now there are programs to catch, and here's the cycle again. AI can catch the originality of these comments and give you an originality score. And it just is so frustrating because, it's the comment that we had, that maybe we're just going to become lazier. And that seems to be what's going on here, that the students are just being lazier when they don't have to be. And it's dishonest. It's a form of plagiarism. And I personally find it insulting to my intelligence that they think that I won't catch it. But then we also have the question of, I know a lot of instructors are very concerned that teachers are going to be replaced by AI. And so, and that's viable, I suppose, but then what's going to happen? I mean, talk about an apocalypse when your teachers and your professors are AI and then the students are all AI.
Right. You let the programs talk amongst themselves. We'll go do something else. Let's get a cocktail.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about laziness,
cocktail.
Well, I have water today, but yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'll have cocktail next time. All my liquor still in boxes.
Yeah. And then there was, I don't know if you heard about this. I think it was with Texas AMA. What was it? Texas A&M. A&M. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a instructor who he just put all of his students' papers, their final papers, through ChatGPT to see if they copied.
Mm-hmm.
And ChatGPT told, yeah, I wrote this. And it kept saying, yeah, I wrote this one too. Yeah, I did that. I wrote all of this. And he failed all of his students based on that. And the students were like, I wrote this paper. I didn't cheat, I swear.
Yeah.
And then they put a paper that instructor wrote through ChatGPT and said, who wrote this? And he took credit for the instructor's paper.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, I wrote that too. I wrote everything. I wrote all the papers. And so, it was like the first real pushback on, can you trust anything that it says?
Right.
Because it doesn't have sentience. It doesn't know what it's doing. It's just taking credit for everything because it's been asked a question. And it's just answering the question as it wants, it doesn't even want to. It just is answering the question.
Right. Along a similar line. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Along a similar line, there was a lawyer, or lawyers are using AI to search case files for support for their arguments. And one of them filed a lawsuit based on what this AI came up with. And the decision was based on a court decision that did not exist. So ChatGPT made up a court decision, blah, blah, blah versus blah, 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 that did not exist to support its argument. And then asked about that, GPT says, no, this is real. And it would give a whole background on it, but it still didn't exist. So this is artificial intelligence in a way, but it's not that intelligence compared to what we're doing. And it still needs human oversight.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I use a program, it's called Descript, for the regular podcast. And I record the podcast and open it up into script, and what it does is it automatically generates a transcript for me. But it's not always accurate. You know, you kind of have to go in and change some things. But what I like it for is that I can remove all the uhs and the ums. And if I paid for a higher level of membership, it would also remove all my you knows and some things like that. And I find it really helpful, but I still have to go through and check it, because sometimes it will remove an that's actually part of the speech. And sometimes it cuts a little bit too much out. But I've noticed recently that I have to do that far less frequently. That it's getting much better at editing out and even keeping the video from seeming all that choppy when it does so. So, you know, that's a positive for me. I can't imagine. I don't know. I have some issues with people just using AI to generate scripts for YouTube and whatnot. I would like, in the best of all possible worlds, you know, legitimate folks using their knowledge and whatnot, rather than AI. But we also have, I know, AI art, and and that can be a whole episode. And I'm going to do a shout out here. My friend Chet Zar, the artist Chet Zar, on his Dark Art Society podcast, has an excellent episode all on AI art. But I would encourage people to go and watch that. But Stephanie created some AI art for us for the apocalypse. I'm going to try to pull some of this up. I'm going to apologize. I'm still learning the program here, and I'm going to shift myself here. I think I'm going to add Stephanie to the right. Try to put myself in the middle because it was just pulling up on my screen. But let's look at some of this. And Steph, if you want, maybe kind of describe your process on creating some of these.
I actually didn't do this. My partner Lisa Hall did this, and she helped me go through all this. This is from Starry AI, and we decided on choosing as a prompt here. This is generative AI for a prompt of apocalyptic scenarios for Hieronymus Bosch. So this is a futuristic Hieronymus Bosch painting, or in the style of Hieronymus Bosch. So there you go. We have to work with it a little bit more. I think I was a little sad that we didn't get any Hieronymus Bosch eggs, and you know, but that one's a little cooler, I think.
Or people being tormented, or you know, having sexy fun time with demons.
Yeah, exactly. But
that would have been sexy AI.
Yeah,
that would have been sexy AI. Yeah, but
yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah,
it's got a little floating island there of apocalyptic doom.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I noticed in all three of these is that there seems to be like a line going down the middle of it. You can kind of see it in this one. I'll pull the other. This one's more faint, but it's certainly centered. There's like a sun or something, and there's a red line coming out of it. And then on this one, you definitely clearly see the red line. And the other one we had... that one, you still see it as well.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious why it put it in there all the time. I don't think any of us have the answer, but I'm just curious why it did that. And you also, I'll just pull up one of them here. You did or Lisa did a Frito Kahlo prompt for Apocalypse.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure that one looks quite apocalyptic, but it does look kind of cool, and it's like, I don't know, but I thought it was amazing that you could do this in a matter of a couple of seconds.
Right.
Just put your
Hmm.
prompts in
Hmm.
and generate something that she didn't do, but this took a matter of seconds to create something that looks like it was painted.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
So this is sort of an art apocalypse.
Mm.
AI art apocalypse.
well, well, yeah. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, anyone can generate this. It basically scours the internet, puts something together, and how many people's art was lifted there, you know, and
Right.
I could use it for I don't know, a book cover or some such,
Mm.
and who gets paid? No one. It's
Right.
Right.
it's and we're heading into some strange territory, I think. Who is getting what for what? What are copyright laws gonna do about all this?
Right.
What's gonna happen with so many um, so many laws on the books for that protect people right now,
Hmm.
and we don't know. I mean, and it's just coming out so fast, so like a bulldozer. It's just coming in, destroying all sorts of things, and it might be building up stuff too, but it's hard to tell what's what at this point.
Right.
It's sort of an explosion, like, of so many things all at once.
Hmm.
Good, bad, and the ugly all coming at us
Yeah.
at once.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a couple of things. One, I just wanted to say I think that with AI, it does have a beneficial aspect,
Hmm.
Right.
um, and there are definitely positives. I know my friend Jennifer has used it a little bit in terms of like generating questions for certain things, or plotting everything out and like, okay, like maybe what am I missing, and has found it really
Hmm.
helpful. But again, it has to have that interaction. It's not just AI taking
Hmm.
control of everything. But the art is definitely an issue, and for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I think that Jeremy had mentioned before we began recording an author who claims that there are books that have been generated through AI using their name.
That was
And
Stephanie. Yeah.
yeah, oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry. And then also, this is part of the ongoing strike in Hollywood, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Um, there's just so much that we're at the precipice of something very weird, I think,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
because there's just so many unknowns. And right now, like the Hollywood strike, I think is a really good thing to take a look at right now, because it's like the petri dish of so much, because you have the writers, you have the actors. My I was thinking about digital image,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
and how much control we have over digital image right now. Like an
Hmm.
actor might sign, an extra or principal actor, it doesn't really matter which, can be signing away the rights of their digital image and not really understand that that's what they're doing.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And
Right.
now their digital image is being used in perpetuity for something, and they have no control over that.
Right.
Right.
And and right now we do have some of that, not with AI, but we do have some of that in terms of, like, corporations, right? If
Hmm.
you work for a corporation, there's a certain image you have to display when you're at work, right? You
Mm.
have to dress a certain way. You have to look, you have to be able to act in a certain way, or you could be terminated, even outside of work.
Mm.
If you were caught on
Hmm.
camera acting in a certain way, you can be terminated for behaving in a certain way. Well, with a digital image issue, how much control does a corporation, does a studio have over how you appear in public?
Mm.
Right.
That's really important, I think.
Hmm.
That we actually address this now at the beginning so that, we're not mired in court cases. We're not mired in all sorts of issues. I mean, I could see potential for slavery issues.
Right,
if
right.
if I am not allowed to act in a certain way because a certain studio sees me in a certain light as being a certain character, and I can tarnish that image, and they
Mhm.
sue me, they could destroy my life.
Right.
So you have issues of perception
Mhm.
of who I am,
Mm.
my perception of self, and the public's perception of me, and the studio's perception of me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's issues of selfhood.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also seems along those lines, just to kind of branch philosophically in terms of selfhood, but also, I keep saying that we're in an epistemological nightmare. Because with deep fakes, and I think AI is being
Mhm.
used with that. So, you could have a video of Joe Biden saying something that he never said,
Right.
Yeah.
and other people. So I see that kind of connected in many ways to what you were just saying. And with AI, it's not just these videos, but all other ways. How are we going to determine what is real and true?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I see that as the information apocalypse, right?
Right.
And they
Right.
are intertwined right there because you can't tell what's true, what's fake. There's really no way, because right now I can go on to YouTube and there's going to be a whole bunch of videos that have been AI generated to tell me that Yellowstone is going to blow.
Right.
And they'll say something like, Neil deGrasse Tyson says, and Neil deGrasse Tyson has said no such thing,
Right.
right? But
Right.
they've mixed a whole bunch of videos together, and right now you can pretty much tell Neil it's
Yeah.
fake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we are maybe 18 months away from that looking much more real.
Right.
Right.
And
And in
are
fact, there are people who could do it now.
yeah.
Mhm.
But the public is probably 18 months away from being able to do that.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of videos, and you can, like you said, you can kind of spot them. I don't see as many of them in my feed anymore, but a lot of them were science-based and frequently about the James Webb Telescope. And it's like the headline would be like, James Webb Telescope, proves God or something like that.
Yeah.
And these are all AI-generated videos. And
Mhm.
if someone is, the videos are supported by the clicks, and if you have, 100,000 people or 1 million people clicking on it, someone's making money off of that,
Right.
Mhm.
and often the information in it is not quite correct anyway.
Mhm. But on a certain
Yeah.
level, the programs don't care.
Yeah.
As long as you get the clicks, as long as you get the views.
Well, the person behind it cares.
Right. Well, yeah. Yeah.
But, and again, maybe maybe the comment was right. It seems like, that's a little bit of human laziness instead of putting in the work.
Mhm.
Yeah. And maybe this is just me being jealous. Trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. So please subscribe if you haven't already
Yeah.
done so.
Someday.
Yeah. Yeah. What other ways, I see another sort of negative aspect of AI is that it's just going to drive us insane. And maybe this is just me, but I think in terms of call centers, that, I will often end up screaming into the phone, just get me a human being. And I'm curious at what point where that's going to be an impossibility, because
I think that's close.
yeah, I think it's really close, right?
Like, okay, so when I was at work, a couple of weeks ago, we had a safety meeting um, on AI and specifically generative AI, and it was mostly about, look, don't put your reports into chat GPT and try to generate your reports that way, because that will make it go public, and
Mm.
and that would be a really bad thing. um, that was just basically a warning not to do stupid things with public uh, things like chat GPT, you know. But what I understand is that in a matter of a year or a little bit down the line, we're going to have programs that corporations are going to start buying, right? So
Mhm.
that their employees aren't going to be, going to the public to have their reports done. They're going to have their own from the corporation, and we're going to be able to use them that way to generate these things, right? How long
Right.
is it going to be until many of our jobs are really not necessary?
Right.
Mm.
And a lot of this stuff is just going to be auto done. I mean, right now it's not at the level that it needs to be.
Mm.
You still need human involvement, a lot of human involvement with that sort of
Mhm.
thing, because you have to have a lot of oversight. But they're getting a lot better very
Mhm.
fast. I mean, extraordinarily fast. So how long will it be until they're so fast that much of what we do can just be done by the program,
Mm.
and
Right.
then all the calls are going to be done by these machines,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that are just able to really quickly turn out that stuff, and no one is going to answer a person's phone call that isn't some sort of program,
Mm.
Right.
because why would you hire a person? You might have a couple of people who can handle things, but why? I mean, it's like the self checkouts right now.
Mm.
How many people you have? A couple of people on hand who can do a checkout, but I mean, Walmart's almost exclusively self checkout.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be, to me, the way things are going to go. Because why
Mhm.
would you hire people who you have to pay and then have to give benefits to?
Right.
And there's all sorts of other liabilities with them when you could just have an AI doing that stuff.
Mm.
Right.
And I don't know how long that will take. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, but it seems to be that they're generating these programs pretty quickly. I mean, they're gaining speed in how fast they are improving them.
Mm.
So, anyway,
Well, I think that automation has long been an issue, and
yeah.
I see AI as just the next level of
Yeah.
Hmm.
automation. And uh, you know, two things that I was thinking of as you were speaking, Steph, is that one, yes, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. That almost always happens with automation. But I was also thinking, it's like, well, is that necessarily so bad when the majority of the jobs are in this extractive ecocidal economy? Do we really need people doing this? But also along in those lines is, it's I've heard it said, especially when there's, you know, high unemployment numbers, that it's so remarkable that, you know, well, maybe there aren't jobs, but there's so much work that needs to be done. And so I would hope that there's a possibility that we can use AI in such a way to help us figure out the work that we can do to save ourselves and to save the earth while we
Mhm.
still have
Mhm.
the chance, and kind of shift away because, you know, we have to change the system we're in. And
Right.
the system's changing. So right now it seems like we need to have, while we still have the ability, we need to be able to put the input in.
Right. Have you ever seen the movie I, Robot?
No.
Okay, it's with Will Smith or whatever. It's a
Right.
horrible science fiction movie about AI trying to take over the world.
Mm.
But it's based on a book called I, Robot by Isaac Asimov,
Right.
which has
Mhm.
beneficial AI.
Mm.
The ethics of the AI is written into the programming. These robots cannot be created without things like cannot cause harm to a human being, et cetera, stuff
Right.
like that. And so eventually the networked robots create a system where humans can live in peace and prosperity because it took over.
Mm.
So is there something along those lines that can happen? Beneficial AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that comes back to Stephanie saying that we need to tackle this stuff up front,
Mhm.
the ethics of what we're
Mhm.
doing.
Right.
And I 100% think that that's possible. I think
Mhm.
a lot of things are really possible, and it could be that we can use AI in a very positive, very
Mhm.
forward thinking, ecological way that
Mm.
would be amazing.
Right.
And what we need to do is get out of our own way so that we can do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we don't have really the historical
Right.
uh,
Right.
precedent that's what we're going to in fact do. But
Mhm.
I would like to think that we would, because I think that you could certainly have AI come out and say, "Hey, you're destroying your planet. Here,
Mhm.
let me help you not destroy your planet." But when there's so much money to be made
Right.
doing the
By
wrong thing,
by unethical
that's
people.
where I
Yeah.
get that's where I get nervous about such things. And I
Yeah.
think, oh, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to go that way. Um, maybe we can, maybe, but um, I don't know. I think it's possible. I think it's improbable.
Mm.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and there's also the concern if we were to put in a prompt to AI about, how can we, save the environment, and it comes back, well, kill all the humans.
You are a virus.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
well,
Well, and I know that I had intended to look this up, so maybe we can do this when we address this in a later episode. But someone did put in a prompt to one of the AIs about, well, if you were going to destroy the world, how would you go
Mhm.
about doing it? And the AI laid out a scenario that was pretty chilling, that seemed that, yeah, if it was going to do it, that's the way it would do it.
Mhm.
But the response, and I forget all the details, so I apologize about that. But the thing that I kept thinking of, because you'll hear people like, well, folks can get, directions on how to build nuclear bombs and things like that, and other, pretty nasty things. I'm like, well, but some of this has been widely available anyway. Just pick up the, Anarchist Cookbook, and you can make napalm and some other stuff.
Right.
And it seems like it's not necessarily the AI that's the problem there, but
Right.
it's the human that's the problem.
Mhm. Agreed.
yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
goes back to what we were talking about before, that
Yeah.
it's a reflection of us, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
what did it do? It scoured the internet, came back, and it gave answers that we all gave at
Mhm.
some point.
Right. Or like the
It's
legendary Twitter bots that read tweets after tweets after tweets and tweets became the best tweeter that there was, and turned out to be a racist, raging homophobic.
Mm-hmm.
This is what Twitter was telling it to be. And
Yeah.
it's human
Yeah.
beings telling it to be that.
And
that's also Twitter.
yeah, and
Right. Well, yeah.
And I would thoroughly encourage the use of twits rather than tweets.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's X, formerly known as
Yeah.
Twitter. No,
Right. The artist formerly known as Twit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Twit.
Lord. Well, and I am sure that people,
Speaking of Elon,
yeah, people like Elon, they're, Lord only knows how they're going to try to incorporate AI into their plans for world domination.
mm,
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll all just be in agreement on that one.
Right. That was kind of a downer. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I think another, and this could also be its own episode, but I think it brings up questions and of, at the core, we have this question of human and the relationship between humanity and technology.
Mm-hmm.
And there is another thought along with this is that somehow humanity is going to merge with the technology.
Transhumanism.
Yeah, there's the transhumanism, and I'm thinking in terms of Ray Kurzweil and his writings on the singularity. And I think he's suggesting that we're going to be there in just a few years.
Mm-hmm. Estimates I've seen is anywhere between 2030 and 2050 will hit singularity.
Yeah, yeah, and
that's pretty quick.
And if I understand right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the singularity is that moment where we transcend what we currently understand as being human, and we fully merge with machine.
That depends on who you read. Some people say the singularity is when computational power bypasses human computational power.
Okay.
And at that point, it really becomes the computer's world, not ours.
Mm.
The other one is what you just said, is where we merge sufficiently with machines that we are indistinguishable from our own technology.
Okay. So that first one seems to be a little bit more apocalyptic. That one kind of worries me a little bit more.
Right. And that's where we get into the Matrix.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I don't like my cell phone listening to me. But I do have friends that they're like, no, if I could just put a chip in my brain, by all means do it. And if I can enhance myself, I'm like, I don't think I'm quite there, but I don't know. I guess it would depend on what kind of skills I could get with that chip. If I could move things with my mind or something, I'd probably be down for that.
Right. I'd be okay with flight myself, but
yeah, flight would be okay, but right now I'm just thinking in terms of being able to just open the doors with my mind, or bring my drink to me if I need it.
I do that all the time. I'm walking through the corridors at work, and I wave my hands, and the door's open. It has nothing to do with the sensors in the ceiling.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are sensors involved, but if you put the sensor directly in your head. Although I would be really concerned about how much have a thought, and then the next thing you know, it shows up on your doorstep delivered by Amazon.
Right.
I'm like, no, I wasn't intending to buy that, but I just had the thought to buy it.
You don't want to be able to upload your whole brain to the cloud and get a new body whenever it wears out.
No, I think that you had mentioned an outstanding book. It's a couple decades old now, I think. The Pearly Gates of Cyberspace, and I think it's Margaret Wertheim, who kind of argues what I had said before, and we've been talking about, is that we often use our technology as metaphor, and she was examining how we use the computer as metaphor. And this idea of being able to upload our consciousness into the cloud or something to achieve some kind of immortality, I think that it has religious roots to it, right? In terms of immortality after death, that we can shuffle off our physical body but yet still exist some place somehow. And and this is just my opinion, but I think that most people don't actually think about what immortality entails. I don't think they actually think about eternity, because from my perspective, what scares me isn't death, but deathlessness.
Yeah.
So I want some, I could definitely live longer. I'm down with living longer. But living forever in a cloud, there has to be like a kill switch somewhere in there where I can be like,
Right.
done, I'm ready to go. And I know
Michael Moorcock. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, Michael Moorcock. He's a science fiction fantasy author. He wrote a book called Dancers at the End of Time, in which that actually happens. They've achieved immortality at the end of time, and they become so bored. I mean, that's just the least of the problems you could have with immortality. Is how bored do you have to be? What would you do if you were so bored?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that, it begs the question as to, if we do have a soul and we are immortal beings who are here for a short time and we die and we come, like if we did start uploading our consciousness to a cloud and like, I don't know, we can come back and have like a different body like Cylons do or something like that. Well, what did we just do to circumvent like what we would actually do with our souls? Like, did we just prolong our actual death? Like we're alive in this current in this current incarnation without being able to be released from, like, I'm still Stephanie, I've come back and I'm still Stephanie because now I'm just Stephanie in a lion bot body or something, or whatever I've chosen as my new avatar, because this Stephanie body has worn out and I've uploaded myself to the cloud and I've come back and I've chosen a new form.
Yeah.
But I'm still Stephanie, right?
Right.
So now I've become what? I've now achieved something that Stephanie goes on, but whatever I could have gone on to is now not going to happen for a while.
Right.
Unless the cloud gets destroyed and and then we all go free.
And if there is a soul, does it stay with your digital awareness or does it stay with your physical awareness? And when you upload your consciousness to the digital sphere, what happens to that awareness within your physical body? Is it destroyed or is it still there? That's something people don't think about when they think about, I'm going to upload my personality into the computer network. Okay, so you're still there in your physical body and you have no idea what it's like in there, but now there's this copy of you. And where's your soul?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about that, right? And is there something to me as Stephanie that is entailed in this body? So going to the cloud, does that
I was going to say,
make me something else?
That makes you, right? And that goes back to what we were talking about before, but I just totally lost that thread now. Sensory input partially creates who we are.
Yeah.
So if we're in a different sphere of realm of awareness or sphere of existence, are we that same person or are we something different?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a huge can of worms right here. Yeah. So, and I think this is something that would be deserving of its own episode. Again, a lot of this is just to try to hash out some future episodes that we can do and have a initial conversation. And again, I invite anyone who watches this to share their thoughts in the comments below. But yeah, a lot of it seems to me to be bound to in some aspects, a dualistic ideology of mind body, as if we can upload the mind separate from the body, which is what you were just saying. Because if you look at the mind and body as being deeply connected, and not necessarily separate.
Right.
You can't upload you to the cloud without your body and without the
Right.
ability
Right.
to have those sensual experiences, because that's not you.
Hmm.
That's it may be close to you, but the thing is, if you also do this while you're still alive, like, if we had the technology where I could upload my consciousness today, and that would be a copy of my consciousness, I would
Right.
assume.
Right.
And I would then continue to go on and exist and have real world lived experiences
Hmm.
that the uploaded consciousness would not have.
Hmm.
And it would then have its own experiences.
Right.
And so if we talk about sense of self, it would seem like that would be a completely different being, has a common origin in a way, but goes on to be something rather different.
Hmm. Yes.
And the other thing I was thinking when you were talking stuff is karma and reincarnation. What happens then? But I think that that's the idea that, I think there's a different issue maybe of uploading the consciousness now versus uploading the consciousness at the end of life.
Right.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. But if we upload our consciousness, does that mean we're uploading our souls? Because there is a long-standing tradition, especially in philosophy, where mind and consciousness and soul are equated.
Right. And if we're already living in a simulation,
Yeah. Is it a simulation of a simulation that we're uploading
right,
our consciousness to?
and have already lost our soul
Yeah.
somewhere down the levels of simulation.
Hmm.
Yep. That's a lot to think about.
Well, the awkward silences for a
Right.
live stream are, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, you all out there, think about that.
yeah, yeah. Well, it does
Let us
bring
know
in,
what you think.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Give us the answers.
yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Is all this simulation? What's the soul? Um, Easy stuff for Saturday, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. So, what are we missing here in terms of the AI apocalypse or AI in general? Is there anything that comes to mind that we haven't discussed yet?
I've got one thing,
Yeah.
and that is we've talked about different types of apocalypse. Is that, I don't know if that's right.
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse. Number one, apocalypse is often thought about as the end of the world,
Right.
but
Right.
apocalypse itself is Greek for revelation.
Right.
So AI apocalypse could be AI revelation, a revelation about AI, or about AI providing revelation of something. That's something we haven't addressed at all.
Right. Well, I think we've
So,
touched on it a little bit in the sense that if how we think about AI is a reflection of our
mhm,
own humanity,
mhm,
then AI, if it is a reflection of us, that is a kind of revelation. What is
right,
it going to reveal about the human?
that makes sense.
One way I thought about it also is in terms of the digital self,
Hmm.
the image self. I talked about a really bad way in terms of being a slave, being, like
Hmm.
a corporate slave or a studio slave. But there's also like a really freeing type of way that we can look at it. I don't know who has seen Ready Player One. I remember both of you who said no, you hadn't seen it, but some out there who has seen it. A lot of the people in the movie, the characters, envision themselves in a very particular way.
Right.
Where they created their avatar, who they were, and it was a better reflection of themselves than what they actually appeared as in the real world. Their real world was a dystopian, but
Hmm.
their digital selves, they could be anything. And they chose what they look like, how they interacted with their digital world, so they could be, male or female or hermaphrodite or whatever they wanted to be. transgender, you know, um, they were able to have certain powers. They were able to basically represent themselves in that world as they felt. And I thought that was a very beautiful thing. You know, it's really like you are how you feel rather
Right.
than what you are saddled with, you know, and we all have had that feeling of being, you know, really oppressed by our circumstances, you know, and not being able to always change it. And, you know, whether it's economics, um, you know, the unfairness of whatever going on in our lives. But in this world, that didn't matter as much.
Mm.
You know, it was much more about what you can create for
Mm.
yourself. So that was a
Right.
really positive
Hmm.
aspect of being able to represent yourself as you wanted. So anyway, that to me was is an unveiling of the personal self.
Mm.
You know,
Right.
this is who I really am and really want to be, and that could be a very spiritual thing as
Mm-hmm.
well,
Right.
a representation of soul.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and I think there's history to that as well. I mean, going back to the beginning of the internet, because people could present themselves however they wanted. And I think that there
mhm.
was, again, positives and negatives, because you would have people
Sure,
presenting themselves as, in very
trolls.
nefarious ways. Well, not just the trolls, but, like presenting themselves as a 12-year-old girl,
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
entice other 12-year-old girls, right? Negative.
Right.
Hmm.
But it did allow people, especially if you lived in an area that was very restrictive, that you
Hmm.
could be more yourself. So it seems like
Hmm.
maybe what you're saying is that we're going to the next level with that, where we can
Hmm.
actually be more of who we are.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. Especially like with stuff like VR,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there's, I mean, you know, we have the failure of Meta.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's that's a problem. But but we also have people developing different technologies with it. So, you know, something will come through that will be the next generation of that will hopefully be a better experience.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's a um you know, it's certainly something that where people can feel, you know, more themselves
Mm.
if it's done right. You
Mm.
know, and it's going to evolve. It's going to be done better by somebody else. It's not going to be done by Zuckerberg, you know,
Yeah.
because he's part of the previous generation. It's going to be someone else coming through and
Mm.
making that theirs, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and there's going to be positives and negatives to that, right? Because, you know, it's like anything, it's got its underbelly,
Yeah.
you know. So
Right.
we're always going to be on guard
Yeah.
for whatever comes through.
Well, it seems like we're in a place that we're on the verge, that we're at the very beginning stages of this
Mhm.
AI apocalypse. And what do you think? It's like the next 10, 15, 20 years? It seems like in that time frame, we're going to be living in a radically different world. Not
Right.
just with AI, but also in
Right.
terms of climate change and a few
Hmm.
other things.
Mm,
Yep.
definitely a
Yeah.
radically different world.
Yep.
And I think 20 years is too far out. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be much closer than that. It's probably like within the next, I think in the next 2 years, we're going to see some really radically different things. But in the
Mm.
next 10 years, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book The Peripheral by William Gibson?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that's one to consider
Yeah.
reading, just for the idea of what he calls the jackpot. The
Mm.
world radically changed over a course of years, like many years. But it was a combination of things that happened. It wasn't just one singular event, which is what most people think of when they think of an apocalypse.
Right.
God comes down, destroys the earth. AI arises and destroys the earth. But this was things after things: climate change plus sociological change plus blah 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 blah. And it's called the jackpot because we won it all. And society changed significantly through that process.
So it was a jackpot, so it changed for the better?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right.
It's kind of ironic in that way, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, with the little I know about Gibson, I wouldn't think that it would be for the better. Yeah. So, all right. Anything else? I know that we're almost at the end of our time. We got a little bit of a late start, but I do want to end this at 1:30. So anything else that we haven't talked about, or ideas of things that we could talk about in the future for our AI apocalypse?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah. Anyone in the comments or anybody watching this in the future have ideas, feel free to put those in the chat down or the comment down below.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we leave, a couple of things I wanted to do. One, we did not have a drink recipe, as we already said, but would like to direct people to Jeremy's YouTube channel, Kill Devil. So, Jeremy, what is the URL for that again?
My channel is called Kill Divil, so it's KILL-DIVILL, and it's rum and cocktails.
Okay, perfect.
Kill Devil is an old colonial era term for the word rum.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll put that in the comments down below.
Okay. And also, I wanted to give two shout outs. One, I wanted to acknowledge Colleen Costello for becoming a patron to Rebel Spirit Radio. And actually is doing a lot of other things with the podcast. And I am so very, very, very grateful for that. And also, I wanted to thank Dr. Sharon Kogan for her incredibly generous one-time donation to the podcast. So for both of you, I am so immensely grateful. Thank you. That's going to help me continue this work quite a bit. So the next episode is going to be September 9th, which happens to be my birthday. So Jeremy, you have to do a special cocktail for that. And just so you know, I always have to, and you may cringe at this, but I always have to have banana cake. So if you can make something that goes well with banana cake, that would be perfect.
Okay, I'll slide this through a cocktail AI and see what it comes up with.
Yeah, as long as it's tasty, because if it's poison,
I'll try it afterwards.
All right. Well, Stephanie and Jeremy,
I always do banana cake too.
Yeah. Well, you can have banana cake this year. I'll invite you over since we're in the same neighborhood now, same city at least.
Awesome.
Yeah. But you don't like my cream cheese icing, but you'll just have to deal. So thank you both. I know. Thank you both for spending this time with me this morning in the conversation. As always, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. And again, everyone who views this at a later time, please feel free to make comments down below, and we'll include them in a later episode, and definitely consider them as we move forward with the next version of the AI apocalypse.
All right.